Thrilled that you're with us this morning. If you're visiting, my name is Sal. I am one of the pastors here. Worship team, thank you so much. If you have kiddies downstairs, make sure you thank our children's workers. That's a lot that they do to help keep our kids directed towards God. Before we begin, anybody remember Let's Make a Deal? Yes. Some of you here probably remember Monty Hall, the original. On that game show, what he would do is he would ask, does anybody have a paper clip? Does anybody have a stamp? Does anybody have, and they would open up their pocketbook or open up their bag and pull it out. This morning as we launch this service, I want us to look at that imagery in our mind for a moment, because I'm going to give you information, some scriptural truth. You heard some awesome songs, and the fact is we really can't take it all home and go through it and process it within our own strength. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask God to unclasp, unzip, to open, or we're going to open like that pouch, the pouch of our heart, our mind, our soul. And we're going to ask God to deposit within the information that we're hearing so that when the time comes, when there's a situation that we may need it, His Spirit will give it to our spirit to help us walk through everyday life. Have you ever had a situation where something has come to mind and you're like, where did that come from? And you have a strong sense it was God giving you direction. So this morning, what I want you to do is I want you to consciously lay aside the issues of this week, the issues of life, the ongoing issues of life, and ask God to open your mind and to deposit within scriptural truth, His Word, nuggets that can stay within you and then be tapped into as needed. So I'll ask you to take some time with God and ask Him to give you something today, and then I'll pray and open this. God, we do thank you for your love. We thank you for allowing us to be here today. We thank you for the breath that we're breathing right now and the fact that we woke up. And God, we're here this morning, and my prayer is that each person receives something from being here, but more so, receive something from you. Something that you can use to encourage them, lead them, direct them, guide them, even correct them on their journey of life with you. My prayer is that it would be stored inside, that God, when it's needed, you would bring it back to their memory. You would bring it to them in such a way so that they can take the next step on their journey with you without hindrance. Father, we open our hearts to you. We pray this in your name. Amen. So, we've launched this series called Seemingly Unimportant Decisions. And we look at life and we make decisions in life, and sometimes the decisions we make in life have greater consequences than we thought they ever would. Reality is we are the sum total this day of all the decisions that we have made in the past. All the decisions that we've made in the past result in who we are today. All the decisions that we make today, tomorrow, and in the future will determine who we become. Agree or disagree? So it's so important that we learn how to make decisions so we can become who God would have us to be. Who God would have us to be. And on this journey, we have to come to the reality that not every decision in life is an unimportant decision. But more so, most decisions are far more important than we give them weight to be. So what does it mean, surrender over control? Surrender over control. How many control freaks do we have? Point to one. Anybody a control freak? Why? You love to be in control, right? Not only do you love to be in control, just like I'm breathing and it comes natural to me, control comes natural to you. It's just the thing you do. Or maybe your way is the only way. And you have trained yourself to not be able to hear other people and to hear their perspective, to hear their opinions, to hear their words of wisdom, because there's a wall that's up Because you automatically, instantaneously believe that you know it's best. Anybody here like that? Anybody married to somebody like that? They're pointing at each other. Okay. We will be starting a marriage class. So what happens, the issue for a control freak, is the more that you try to control, the more that you're afraid of losing control. And the more afraid that you are of losing control, the harder you try to control it. So it becomes this battle within, and then usually it works into a battle with other people. And at some point, we have to choose surrender. Chill. Step back. In order to really see that we may have an issue that is not only hurting our relationship with God, but hurting our relationship with others. When we try to control something that's not ours to control, complete that statement. What would you say? Catastrophe. We're trying to be like God. God is the one who is sovereign. God's the one who says, you know, I have a plan, and I love you as Daddy God, as Father God, and I want to walk you through this life, guide you through this life. And in this earth, it's so confusing. There have been so many people who try to take control of religion, of all these different things that people don't even know anymore. But you know what? We get to choose every morning if we want to be a control freak or if we want to be a faith freak. If we want to at some point say, God, I surrender because I can't handle this. God, I can't control this. I think I can. Have you ever come to the end of yourself realizing that you tried to control something for so long that you actually realized what a mess it was? Why is everybody looking at each other? Come on. They're pointing at each other? Okay. But if we're honest, we all might have elements where we're more of a control freak than a faith freak. Where we can simply step back and say, God, I trust you. There's an awesome story in the Bible. And it's a story that is kind of, if you think about it, it's freaky. So follow me, ready? Guy named Abram, wife named Sarah, or Sarai at this point. And God made some promises to them. And during the process of them walking with God, God wanted to lead them and direct them. And they struggled with surrender and control. Let's pick it up here. Genesis 15, 1-6. The Lord spoke to Abram in a vision and said to him, don't be afraid, Abram, for I will protect you, and your reward will be great. That's good, God, but, Abram replied, O sovereign Lord, what good are all your blessings when I don't even have a son? So in this particular time in history, the patriarch of the family wanted to have a son to pass on the blessing, to pass on the leadership. And there was a stigma kind of attached when a woman couldn't have children, when a family didn't have a child. So Abram is saying, you know what, God, all the blessings in the world are great, but I don't have a kid. I don't have a child. Since you've given me no children, Eliezer of Damascus, a servant in my household, I have to give my inheritance to somebody else. You have given me no descendants of my own. One of my servants will be my heir. The Lord said to him, no, your servant will not be your heir, for you will have a son of your own who will be your heir. Then the Lord took Abram outside and said, look up at the sky, count the stars. I'm going to give you a fertile son. That's how many descendants you will have. And Abram believed the Lord, and the Lord counted him as righteous because of his faith. So at this stage of the game, Abraham is 75 years old. Abram is 75 years old. God says, you're going to have a kid. You're going to have a kid. So God tells you something. How long do we wait for that to happen? Who's timing? Because you know how like you open the milk container and it says milk expires, an expiration date? How many of us, our faith has an expiration date? When we don't get it when we want it, we give up having faith. And we say, nope. So let's keep going. So, Abram was promised at how old? 25. Abram is now how old? 85. And he still ain't got a kid. He still ain't got a kid. So his wife thinks, you know what? I can help. I can help. So this is his wife's solution. control, or surrender. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had not been able to bear children for him. She had an Egyptian servant named Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, "The Lord has prevented me from having children. Go and sleep with my servant. Perhaps I can have children through her." I know you want to have a child. Listen, go down to the end of the cul-de-sac. That lady down there was fertile. Go see if you can have one with her. Then just bring it home and we'll call it a family. Because there was a stigma attached to not being able to have children. So her solution may not have been the best solution. And now as a loving, faithful husband, what he says is exciting because you know he'd say, "Hey, you can't do that." And Abram agreed with Sarai's proposal. So Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, the Egyptian servant, and gave her to Abram as his wife. So Abram had sexual relations with Hagar, and she became pregnant. So you picturing this story? This is like Wisteria Lane. This is like something you would see on Friday night television. So now Abraham is 86 years old when Hagar has a kid. And they name the kid Ishmael. And the story goes on. Let's keep going a little bit. So now there's a time lapse. You ready? Abraham is how old? 86. So now Abram is what? 99. 86. So this little kid is 13 years old. There's been conflict between Hagar and Sarai because, I got pregnant. You couldn't. I mean, there was all this kind of stuff, this conflict going on. So picture of it. So now, 13 or so years later, Abram's 99, Sarah's 90-ish, and these three guys are walking by, and Abram sits and talks to them, and they were actually angels sent by God to instruct Abram and Sarah that they were going to have children. So I don't want to be rude or disrespectful, but do we have any women rounding 90 years old who think that they're ready to bear a child? Probably not, right? So Sarai is sitting there listening to what's going on, and this is her take. Abraham and Sarah were both very old by this time, and Sarah was long past the age of having children. So she heard these guys talking, and she laughed silently to herself and said, "How could a worn-out old woman like me enjoy such pleasure, especially when my master is dead too? I mean, especially when my master is old. He's 99 years old." So in human nature, this does not look like it's going to happen. It's not going to look like it's going to happen. Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh? Why did she say, 'Can an old woman like me have a baby?' Is there anything too hard for the Lord? Tell me about your marriage. Is it healthy? Tell me about your kids. Are they making right choices? Tell me about your finances. How are they right now? Is there anything too hard for the Lord? No, you can get a 90-year-old pregnant, but you certainly can't fix my marriage. You can get a 90-year-old pregnant, 99-year-old old man can do what he needs to do, but you can't." And so often we look at this story and, oh yeah, God has faith. I can't believe that they disobeyed him. But when we look at our own lives, so often we choose faithlessness over surrender. So, they said, did I change the screen? Where'd it go? Oh, is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return about this time next year, and Sarah will have a son. Sarah was afraid, so she denied it, saying, "No, I didn't laugh, God. I didn't call you a liar. No, I didn't call you a liar. I didn't call you a liar." And here's what's totally interesting. When you get the picture of what's going to take place, so we got Abram, who needs to have a kid because God promised him. It doesn't happen, so Sarah works her little magic and says, "Hey, go sleep with Hagar." And there's a spiritual lesson here. Never sleep with a woman named Hagar. But anyway, but as you track with this, right? Something big. There was conflict then. There's conflict now. Look at it this way. Abram got Hagar pregnant. Hagar had Ishmael. Ishmael was in the line of the Philistines, and the prophet Muhammad came from the Philistines. Then you flip over here. He got Sarah pregnant, and he had Isaac. Isaac, leader in Jewish nation. Jesus came from that. And these two nations have been at war ever since. So there's a huge effect from that seemingly unimportant decision back then. So the question on the table is this. We look at this, and if we're honest, We see this as a Bible story. We see this as something on the pages of Scripture. And we say, no wonder why people have messed up. People did that. Well, if I wrote a story, let's say about the last 5 years of your life, and we looked at some of the decisions you made or some of the decisions I made, people might be just as bewildered. Yay or nay? So let me ask you a question. The question is this. What are you trying to control right now? Right now, what are you trying to control? Think about that. Put a name to it. I'm trying to control my relationship with my boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife. I'm trying to control my kids. I'm trying to control the outcome at work. But you need to name it, because you can't fix something you can't name. You can't fix something you can't name. And what's wild is the story of Abraham and Sarah goes on and positively produces our Savior, Jesus. But in the midst of all the turmoil, we have to recognize that when we don't surrender and we try to take control, we alter the destiny not only of ourselves, but most likely of others. Most likely of others. So, let me ask you, is this mine to control? So what you're controlling, is it yours to control? Is it yours to control? Are you going to choose surrender over control? How many of you wish you could fix the decision your kids are making? How many of you wish, like that story where the old country guy goes into the city and he has his son in his old pickup truck, they go into the lobby of this building and they're country bumpkins that ever seen this type of stuff. And he gets out with his son, leaves his wife in the truck because she's at the curb, and he goes inside, and the boy and the father are sitting in this big lobby of this hotel. And there's these doors open, and these doors close, and these doors open. And this haggard woman walks in to these doors, they close. A couple minutes later they open, and this tall, slender, blonde, young woman walks out. Dad looks at his son and says, "Go get your mother." But anyway, sometimes we try to control situations. We try to do things so that we can bring about what we think is best. And God is saying, what about what I think is best? When is the right time to choose surrender over control? You need to ask yourself some questions. Is it worth my concern? What do you worry about that you don't need to be worrying about? We have this little acronym, I know the acronym, you know the KMS. Keep it shut, keep my mouth shut. MYOB, mind my own business. Is it worth my concern? What are you concerned about? What are you trying to control that isn't yours to control? Think about it. See, we control things, and when we control things, we don't grow. We don't allow others to grow. Because sometimes we can stop our children from making certain decisions or choices, but maybe they needed that consequence to teach them not to do it the second time. But we got these helicopter relationships where we're making sure our kids are totally taken care of, when in reality, they need to grow. And growth means we need to step back and let them be in control of their life. Because there's going to come a point where we realize that we can't control their lives. Nor should we. So it's not choosing growth, realistically, it's choosing faith. It's believing that your goal is to allow others to see how they can surrender to God. See, had Sarai stepped back, in 10 years she would have had a son, give or take. She would have had less chaos and less agony. We, as a world today, would have been in a different place. So the decisions that you make today and tomorrow are going to shape your life and most likely the lives of others related to you in the future. So, when is the right time to choose surrender versus control? You have to ask yourself, is it mine to control? The first one was, does it concern me? Because we're concerned about everything under the sun. Can you believe this? Can you believe that? Is this mine to control? What can we control? Right now, if I ask you, what do you legitimately have control over? Quickly, give me 5 answers. Come on.
Gas in my truck.
What?
Putting gas in my truck.
Putting gas in your truck. What else?
Me.
Me. What? You said me.
Just me.
Go ahead. What else?
Our health.
Okay. Our health. So we do have areas in life that we get to control. Can we control our spouse's health? Well, we can buy food and we can do this, but who's in control? Is it mine to control? And there's a big difference between surrender and control. And there's a big difference between surrender and control and relinquishing responsibility. And that's something you have to embrace. Because there are certain things in life that we need to do because of our role. But there are other situations in life where we surrender and we step back and we say, God, you control this. And all that we had hoped would take place usually comes to fruition because he doesn't need us meddling in his situations. Sometimes we get in the way of God. Picture the conversation. Hey, God, listen. Sarah and God. You know, God, I know that you told us you'd have a bunch of kids. I know that you told us we'd be a great nation. You know you told me I'd get pregnant. But you know what? Your timing just isn't working. I got it covered. Let me work this one out, and I'll make it happen. And she did. And she made a lot more happen. And so often, God is trying to lead and direct us. And granted, 16, 17, 18, 20, 22, 25, whatever the age is, you want to have a spouse. God, I want a spouse. God, I want a spouse. God. And you work the situation to make the spouse fit the mold of what you think you want, although they may not fit the mold of what God wants for you. But you don't open yourself up to see that. Or maybe it's a financial decision. I want it now. And we can think of different decisions, and God will give you the ones in your life where you're struggling, or where you need his direction. So we need to ask ourselves, is it mine to control? And if it is, then you need to understand the process of surrender. You need to understand the process of following him through that course of learning. When is the right time to surrender over control? Is it for God alone? You know, there are just some things you can't control. There are some things that you try to control that only God can do that. God, I surrender this person, this situation, my health, I surrender it to you. And at some point, we have to be able to step back and say, I trust you. I trust you. Paul says to his followers in this church in Philippi, never worry about everything. Never worry about anything. Look at that, never worry about anything. Does that make any sense in today's culture? How many of us say, I have to worry about that? Who's going to worry if I don't? Yes or no? I ain't pregnant. Somebody's got to get me pregnant, right? Never worry about anything, but in every situation, let God know what you need. In prayers and requests while giving thanks. While giving thanks. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. Then you will experience God's peace. So, do you have God's peace right now? Don't answer. Just process. If you don't have God's peace, does that mean that you're trying to control something that you shouldn't be controlling? Because if we're not worrying about anything, and we're laying it at the feet of God for him to direct, then we can step back in confidence that somebody bigger, better, more powerful, more purposeful has it under their control. But so often, we are major strugglers between control and surrender. And instead of it being the norm of a lifestyle that I'm surrendered, and on occasion I try to take control, most of the time we take control, live in control, and incrementally, when we're forced to, we try to surrender or let go. We try to surrender or let go. So, how do you make a biblical decision? How do you know when the decision that you need to make is going to be made correctly? What's the first thing you need to do? You need to submit what's inside your intentions to God's will. Have you ever asked God to do something knowing that it wasn't what he really wanted? I have been in many marriage situations where the spouse was praying for a way to get out of the marriage. And God is saying, if I can make this one pregnant, if I can raise Jesus from the dead, if I can create a world, I can fix your marriage. But God, it's a lot easier to walk away.
Because in order to fix my marriage, I have to surrender my will to your will, and I don't want it. We need to submit our intentions to God. We need to be honest with ourselves. Because often, we don't want to give up control. Because the minute we give up control, we feel like we're out of control. And God is saying, that's exactly where I want you. That's exactly where I want you. So we need to begin by submitting our intentions to God's will. We need to pray. And sometimes you say, well, I prayed about this forever, for the longest time, and nothing happened. One of the greatest things with prayer is you learn what's really important the longer you pray about the same thing. God, please help this. God, fix this. God, do this. God. God, what do you want? I've been throwing it out there, left over, right, hand over, whatever. God, I've been putting my stuff out before you. What do you want? I have been praying for my will to be done on earth instead of praying for your will to be done on earth. God, what do you want? And you know what? You have to have an attitude of trust and obedience. And here's where the scary part comes in. If you truly do have an attitude of trust and obedience, then God will show you. Then the scary part is, you have to choose whether or not you're going to obey it. See, God has your best interest in mind. And He has your best interest in mind not to make you happy and wealthy. He has your best interest in mind so that you can live the life He said and He designed for you to live. The life of purpose, the life of influence, the life of peace. The absence of peace is probably indicative of the presence of control. The presence of control. Define the decision. What's the decision I have to make? The decision, and there's two categories that are fairly easy right now. It's a moral or non-moral decision. A moral decision means that in the Bible, God says, this is what I have for you. My child, I love you. I have a plan and a purpose for your life. As daddy, I know what's best for you. So morally, these things are acceptable, these things aren't acceptable. If you want to have a sexual relationship, you need to wait until you have a spouse. That's when I bless it. That's when I bless it. If you want to have a healthy marriage, you need to stay within your marriage. Don't step outside of the boundaries looking for emotional, physical, sensual, sexual satisfaction outside. That's a moral decision. That's a moral decision. This is what I planned. I planned a husband, a wife. I planned this beautiful picture. It's a moral decision. So when you're praying, and you're saying, God, I need your wisdom. God, I need your help. God, what should I do? And if it's a moral decision and God says in His Word, this shouldn't be, then you only have two choices. And the choice is either obedience or disobedience. Obedience or disobedience. If it's a non-moral decision, it's a job location, it's a new house, it's a new car, it doesn't affect your morality, then what you need to do is you need to pull in, okay, what are the biblical principles? What does the Bible have to say? See, when it comes to morality, it's cut and dry. You can never, picture an umbrella. So I'm walking under the umbrella and I'm not getting wet because I'm under the umbrella. The umbrella is what we would call the blessings of God. So I am able to stay blessed because I am under God's obedience. Is that making any sense? So God says, hey, come under the umbrella of blessing. Morally, do it this way. And I say, you know what, God? I'm not sure I can surrender to that one. I want to be in control. So then we live our lives outside of the area of blessing because of obedience. We suffer heartache and pain, looking for something we're never going to get until we tuck under the umbrella of obedience and blessing. Then God can lead us to the place, to the things we've always wanted. Does that make any sense? So when we're out here and everything crashes, we come running back to God and crying and saying, why? What happened? And He says, my child, I had something for you and you chose not to make the simplistic decision. of moral obedience. In the non-moral situations, we have to apply biblical principles. We have to apply biblical. What does the Bible say? What does the Bible say about this situation, that situation? So I'll look at biblical principles. But again, we need to start over. Be ready to accept and obey God's direction. So regardless how you feel, are you willing to obey? Right now, young people in the room, say you're single. You don't have a spouse, you haven't had a spouse, you have not had a physical relationship with anybody. Someday there might be an opportunity where somebody says to you, hey, let's enjoy life together for a moment. And right now, you are hearing, you're actually getting it. You're tucking in your little case of life, information, and you're saying, God, regardless of how I feel in the moment, I always want to obey you. Everybody in the room, regardless of how I feel in the moment, I want to obey you. So right now, you're surrendering control in a moment that you don't even know is going to come, but it's going to come. And at that moment, the Spirit will bring back to you, you said you would obey. And in Luke, Jesus puts it this way. He says, if any of you want to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross daily and follow me. What does that mean? That means when I roll out of bed and I plunk my feet on the floor, or before, I say, God, today I'm choosing to follow you in obedience. I don't feel like it at times. I don't want it at times. But I'm choosing not to control based on my will. I'm choosing to surrender based on your will. And then we walk through that process with a better understanding. When we make those decisions, God, regardless of what you say, I will obey. And some of us have made decisions in the past, and we knew in our gut it wasn't the decision that God wanted us to make. And we justified it, we created a scenario around it, we made the decision and ended up with the consequence. True or false? True. We don't have to do it tomorrow or next week because today we have more information. So, do you believe that God wants to lead you? Do you believe that God has a plan for your life? Do you believe that God wants to show you something better than you can ever choose for yourself? Think of that. Do you believe that God wants to show you something better than you can choose for yourself? So do you believe that He's going to show you His will? That He will give you the information necessary to take the next step in the course of life? And again, we have this simplistic verse. The simplistic verse, trust in the Lord with most of your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In most of your ways, submit to Him, and He will make your path straight. Don't you wish that was the verse? At times, we wish we could navigate and say, okay, God, you got this one, I'll take this one. Okay, God, you'll do it your way today, you're doing it my way tomorrow. It's like a marriage. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you get to be the boss. Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, I'm in control. It doesn't work like that. Because when you have conflict day in and day out, and the most beautiful thing is, when we submit to God, we don't live under this thumb like this. When we submit to God, we can finally stand up and straight and say, hey, I'm following somebody who's never going to lead me astray, going to take me to everything that He ever created me to be and to want and to have and to do with life purpose.
Yeah.
The best place. So trust in the Lord with all your heart. In all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. But if I give this person up, if I stop doing this immorality, if I stop this, or I do that, or I surrender this, what is my life going to be? It doesn't matter. Because I want to obey you first. Parents, you ever given your kid a directive and you really didn't flesh it out? You just said, do this. And you know in your mind you have 15 reasons for it, and it's not control, but it's good parenting. Just do this, stop, or whatever the case is. And at times we have to get to the point of believing that God's a better parent than we are a child. And we can trust His direction. If He says don't, then we say okay. So trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. He will. When I'm stuck in the consequence of a decision from the past, I don't even know how to get out of it. I don't even know how to get out of it. Say yes to God, and He'll show you. And there are others who can help. Seek concrete direction. Where are you going? I don't know. What are you going to buy? I don't know. Anybody ever go shopping just because there's something empty inside of you? You don't even know what you're going shopping for, or you just walk the shelves until you find something that strikes. Yeah, that does it. That does it. And you get home, and you're like, boy, that didn't do it. So I don't have a problem with that. I drive down the parkway, look at the restaurant, say, maybe it's tacos, maybe it's Italian, maybe it's seafood, that'll do it. And we all have that brokenness where we're looking for something else. So what we need to do is we need to seek direction. What am I looking for? God, what's the actual decision? Is it moving to Florida or not moving to Florida? Is it moving to Puerto Rico or not moving to Puerto Rico? Is it buying this house or not buying this house? Is it buying this car? What is it? Well, every time I drive this car, it doesn't look good. So I want something that makes me feel better. I want an outfit. I want whatever the case is. Okay? So we need to seek concrete direction. Ask yourself, do you have all the facts? Investigate, evaluate, gather information. Gather information. See, it's wild because Proverbs says, a wise person foresees danger and takes precautions. A fool goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. If you have to make a rapid decision on something big, most likely the pressure that is being put on you isn't from God, so don't make that decision. Stop. No, I'm not making that decision. Never allow the urgent to interrupt the important. God, I need to see what's ahead, so sit down. You want to make a decision, be wise. I was saying I clean out my son's car on occasion when he comes home, look through some of the papers. He has his paychecks over here and this over here, and I put them up in a file. And I was going through, maybe 2 weeks ago, and he had this little notebook, and I opened it up. He had 2 columns in there, a pro column and a con column, because he had to make a decision. And what happens is we need to learn how to do that. We need to make a list and ask, first of all, God, is this what you want, or is this what I want? How many of you have ever asked that decision? God, is this what you want, or is this what I want? I guarantee you, when you ask that decision, it'll reframe the decision you're making. How will this decision draw me closer to God? Or how will it draw me away? Better yet, how will this decision draw other people closer to God? Or how will it push them away? You with me? So these are just some concrete, I know this sounds academic, but it's just a situation where we can look and say, hey God, I want your direction. Obtain counsel. How many of you have that friend you can go to? I have the friends I can go to. I can go to Mike, and Mike will always tell me, you deserve it, you've worked hard, just get it. God will work it out. Then I have the other friend that I don't want to go to when I really want to buy something, because I know he's going to say, you don't need it, it's not worth it, save your money. But we pick and choose who we go to. Oh, you're right. Oh, baby, your husband's a bum, your wife's no good, you're right. Come and have a beer. I mean, it's one of these situations where we connect ourselves with the wrong people. So what we need to do is obtain counsel, but we need to choose our counsel wisely. Godly wisdom counselors, not earthly wisdom counselors. There's a huge difference. Some people will direct you on how to be significant here. Others will tell you how significant you are there and how to live it out here. And the truth of the matter is this. Plans go wrong for lack of advice. Many advisors bring success. Do you have a group of individuals you go to who can help direct you mentally, emotionally, spiritually? With parenting, marriage, finances, different people have different gifts. I'm going to go to these people, they're going to help me make the right decisions. Help direct me down that path. I can surrender control. Weigh the decision. If I make the decision, it goes, once I've gathered all the information, once I've collected everything, I make that next list, the pros and the cons, the pros and the cons. Evaluate if anything on the list violates God's revealed will. It's funny, Luke chapter 14, awesome verse. Don't begin until you count the cost. For who would begin construction of a building without first calculating the cost to see if there's enough money to finish? Otherwise, you might complete only the foundation before running out of money, and then everyone will laugh at you. The context or the directive behind this, don't go down the road until you know where you're going to end up. Don't start the journey. Figure out now. Figure out now so you can see what's ahead. Because so often we proceed and end up in a place we don't want to be, when in reality, had we taken the time to process, we would have known that's where it ends up. That's where it ends up. We get to act on our decision. I think this is the right decision. I think that this is which way I should go. This is what God has for me. I put all this together, and I believe that this is what God, my counselors, my prayer, my own spirit, I feel like I'm surrendered. I believe wholeheartedly this is which way God wants me to go. So I start walking, believing that, God, the doors will keep opening or the door will close. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to proceed with confidence, this faith of knowing that you're leading me. Why? Because it's not for my glory. It's not for my gain. It's not for earthly significance. God, I just want to make decisions that help people see you in me. I want to make decisions where people are affected in everyday life so they can see how you love them so much that you want to protect and guide and lead them through the course of life. God, I want to seek your kingdom. I want to seek your righteousness because I know when I seek your kingdom and your righteousness, all the things I need in life will be given to me to accomplish your will. So all these decisions we're making out there come all the way back down to, God, my life purpose is to follow you. My life purpose is to help other people learn how to follow you. And when I can trust you, then the decisions that I make will only cause me and draw me closer to you. As a result, people will see. I'm going to ask you to stand and ask the worship team to come. I want you to process for a minute. I want you to look on the screen. Do you believe this to be true? God, you know every decision I need to make and every challenge I face. God, I request the wisdom, the knowledge, the understanding you have promised. And I have decided to follow your will and not my own. Do you know if you tuck this little prayer away in your heart and it's earnestly meant right now before God, that when that time comes and there's a controversy, there's a difficulty, there may be a lack of understanding, that at that moment, I believe wholeheartedly His Spirit will give you the tools to say, God, I already chose to be obedient back then for whatever is coming today, so I'm going to walk in obedience. I'm going to walk in obedience. I want to encourage you that wherever you are in life's journey, whatever decisions you made in the past, they're not going to define you if you allow God's forgiveness, God's healing, God's hope, and God's future to define you. As we listen to the words of the song, as you sing this song, I want you to ask yourself, is this the desire of my heart?
And
God has promised so much for us to walk in, to receive his blessing. And my prayer is that every one of us would choose this day to say, yes, God, I want to be underneath that umbrella of blessing. Do whatever it takes to get me there, and I'll do whatever it takes to follow. Father, we thank you for your love, your grace, and your dad's heart toward us. Father God wants to work in child's life, wants to lead child, wants to lead us step by step to a place where we can rest and know that you have it covered, that you're in control, and we don't have to wrestle day in and day out. May we be able to identify the core, raw desires of our heart, and then address if they need to be presented before you so that they can be surrendered to receive from you the direction, correction, discipline, and guidance that you promise. God, there is so much hope down the road for each one of us, and we embrace by faith, through obedience, God, your blessings. We pray this in your name. Amen. Real quick reminder, tonight, 6 p.m., if you have children 0 to teenage years, we are going to be having a parenting discussion, try to give you some tools to take the next step. So again, that's tonight at 6 p.m. Feel free to show up here. God bless you and have a beautiful sunny Sunday.